Hi everyone, welcome to Simple Concepts. I'm your educator Niyati Paul. Guys, in this particular lecture series we will be discussing mobilization of resources. इसमें हम पहले तो बैंकिंग देखेंगे, उसके बाद कैपिटल मार्केट्स एंड द लास्ट वन विल बी गवर्नमेंट फाइनेंसेस. तो ये पूरी सीरीज होगी. सो आज के इस पर्टिकुलर क्लास में हम डिस्कस करेंगे मोबिलाइजेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज इन केस ऑफ बैंकिंग सेक्टर. सो बिफोर वी स्टार्ट अप विद द एक्चुअल लेक्चर, लेट मी टेल यू ऑल, आप अगर आपका सिविल सर्विसेज प्रिपरेशन बहुत ज़्यादा और पक्का करना चाहते हैं और अपना 2021 में अगर आप अपना सिलेक्शन इंश्योर करना चाहते हैं यूपीएससी में, देन देर इज अ गोल्डन अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर यू वेर इन देर आर 4 एपिक बैचेस आर गोइंग ऑन अनअकैडमी प्लस विच इज़ फॉर 1 फुल ईयर, जहाँ पे 1 जून से ऑलरेडी क्लासेस वहाँ पे स्टार्ट हुई हैं. आपको करना क्या होगा कि वहाँ पे एडमिशन लेना होगा, मतलब सब्सक्राइब करना होगा फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल अनअकैडमी को, उसके बाद प्लस सब्सक्रिप्शन लेना होगा और उसके बेनिफिट्स ये हैं कि आपको फुल सिलेबस कवरेज मिलेगा वहाँ पे. ऑल्सो प्रीलिम्स एंड मेंस की जो टेस्ट सीरीज है वो भी कंडक्ट किए जाएंगे विद प्रॉपर डीप एनालिसिस. डेडिकेटेड डाउट सेशंस रहेंगे आपको क्लैरिफाई करने के लिए, आपके जो भी डाउट्स रहेंगे उनको. और इंटरव्यू प्रिपरेशन में भी आपको अनअकैडमी की पूरी टीम आपको कोऑपरेट करेगी. सेकेंडली, लेट नाइट बायलिंगुअल बैच कोर्सेज भी हैं. अब जैसे एस्पिरेंट्स होते हैं जो 9 to 5 जिनका जॉब होता है या फिर वर्किंग प्रोफेशनल्स होते हैं, उनके लिए भी अनअकैडमी ने ये पर्टिकुलर कोर्स लाया है वेर इन ऑल्सो वहाँ पे भी आपको फुल सिलेबस कवरेज मिलेगा. प्रीलिम्स एंड मेंस के टेस्ट सीरीज अलॉन्ग विद एनालिसिस भी मिलेंगे आपको. इंटरव्यू प्रिपरेशन भी होंगे आपके लिए. ओके, ऑल्सो अगर आप जब भी आप अनअकैडमी का प्लस सब्सक्रिप्शन लेते हो तो आपको अगर डिस्काउंट चाहिए हो देन यू कैन यूज आवर कोड ओवर हियर विच इज SIMPLEYT. ये अगर आप कोड यूज करते हो तो आपको 10% डिस्काउंट मिलेगा जो भी आप एंटायर फी पे करेंगे उस पे. और अनअकैडमी का यूपीएससी चैंपियनशिप भी चल रहा है जहाँ पे ऑल इंडिया फ्री मॉक टेस्ट फॉर यूपीएससी CSC प्रीलिम्स 2020 होंगे और बहुत ही आपके जो मेंटर्स होंगे वो बहुत ही एक्सपीरियंस्ड है. यहाँ पे आप देख सकते हो राकेश वर्मा सर, मृणाल पटेल सर और आतिश माथुर सर जैसे जो भी आपके मेंटर्स होंगे वो आपको एक्सपर्ट्स के द्वारा आपको गाइडेंस मिलेगा. एंड इफ यू एनरोल योर सेल्फ नाउ देन इट विल बी फॉर फ्री ऑफ कॉस्ट. सो हैविंग सेड दैट, लेट्स स्टार्ट आवर टुडेज लेक्चर. ऑल्सो गाइज, अगर आपको हम जो भी यहाँ पे लेसन्स डिस्कस करते हैं, जो भी हम सिलेबस कवर करते हैं, उनका अगर आपको नोट्स चाहिए हो इन द फॉर्म ऑफ PDF, then do join our telegram group. The link of the group is given in the description below. Having said that, let's start today's class. So guys, as we all know, resources is anything which has some value and it is required to accomplish some desired objects. So for life on earth, sunlight is the supreme resource. So it gave birth to all the other current form of resources such as fuel and food. Human beings and every creature constantly struggle and arrange for or mobilize resources they need. Now, over thousands of years, we have built evolutionary societies in which resource mobilization, its means and methods have also been evolved. Now, ancient barter trade was a system of resource mobilization, and then later currencies developed to facilitate it. For a currency to be acceptable by all, it needs a strong legitimacy. जैसे कि अब रुपया होगा हमारे कंट्री में, वो सारे लोगों ने एक्सेप्ट करना चाहिए और this gives strong legitimacy to it. Now in ancient times, this legitimacy was provided by monarchies and now it is done by numerous forms of governments. जैसे कि हमारे पुराने ज़माने में जब भी करेंसी को मतलब किसी भी कंट्री में जब यूज़ किया जाता था उस पर मोहर लगाई जाती थी जो मोनार्क होते थे उनकी. अब क्या हो रहा है, गवर्नमेंट वहाँ पे आप देख सकते हो राइट आपके नोट्स पे कि मैं धारक को 100 पैसे अदा करने का वचन देता हूँ, वहाँ पे साइन होती है अथॉरिटीज़ की. तो दैट इट सेल्फ गिव्स यू उसको एक लेजिटिमेसी प्रोवाइड करती है. Now central thing to the concept is laissez-faire was a concept of resource mobilization only. So when the East India Company colluded with British Empire to get the exclusive rights to trade in the East, it created resentment in newly emerged capitalist class. So as we know, it was around this time that Adam Smith in his book Wealth of Nations strongly preached for free markets. This theory propagated that ruling regimes should let resources be distributed as per principles of demand and supply without intervention. आपको पता होगा राइट, डिमांड एंड सप्लाई का जो ग्राफ होता है वो. So prices of the different commodities or services will send signals to buyers and suppliers as to what to consume and manufacture respectively. Now shortage will shoot up prices, attracting more investment in production, and reverse will happen in case of abundance. This is what is called as free hand of markets. यानी कि अगर कोई भी चीज़ जो मार्केट में है वो अगर एबंडेंस में है तो उसकी प्राइस नेचुरली कम होगी, और जिसकी वजह से इन्वेस्टर्स उस पर्टिकुलर थिंग में इन्वेस्ट करने का नहीं सोचेंगे. वेरएस अगर कोई ऐसी चीज़ है मार्केट में जो बहुत ही ज़्यादा उसकी सप्लाई कम है तो नेचुरली उसका डिमांड और ज़्यादा बढ़ेगा, तो जो इन्वेस्टर्स होंगे वो क्या करेंगे, उस पर्टिकुलर चीज़ में इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए वो बहुत ज़्यादा उत्साहित होंगे. सो दिस इज कॉल्ड एज फ्री हैंड्स ऑफ मार्केट. नाउ द फ्री हैंड और कैपिटलिज्म वेंट ऑन अंडररेटेड for almost 2 centuries. When finally in 1920s there arrived great economic depression in West. हम लोग अभी थोड़ा सा हिस्ट्री में जा रहे हैं, एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री में इकोनॉमी के, सो दैट हमें एक बेस सेटअप करने के लिए मिले हैं ना. वी जस्ट गेट द बेस ऑफ द एंटायर सिचुएशन. So just before this great economic depression in 1919, the Russian Revolution yielded a new alternative ideology of resource mobilization to be called as socialism and communalism. हमने इस सोशलिज्म और कम्युनिज्म के बारे में हमने बहुत ज़्यादा डिटेल में डिस्कस किया है अपने वीडियोस में. एक इंडिपेंडेंट वीडियोस ईच ऑफ द कंसेप्ट पे मैंने डेडिकेट किया है, तो जस्ट गो टू आवर चैनल और ये सारे वीडियोस आप चेकआउट कर सकते हो, सो दैट यू कैन गेट क्लियर अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ द एंटायर टॉपिक. सो द ग्रेट डिप्रेशन डिसमेंटल्ड द कंसेप्ट ऑफ फ्री मार्केट्स. Now the British economist John Keynes demonstrated that markets were amendable to failure, and since then the term market failure came in light. So he professed that government job in times of market failure should be to incur fiscal deficit so that demand in economy is increased. Now fiscal deficit in short is expenditure by government over and above its earning. So traditionally government taxed citizens to fulfill its commitments, but now government will be a net giver as expenditure will be more than its income. So this unfolded a new chapter in resource mobilization, and fiscal deficit became an all-pervasive mean to cause changes in resource distribution towards the weak and the vulnerable sections of the society. So by this time the banking system was highly evolved. Capital or debt markets, primary and secondary markets of different things, they also emerged. So topic of resource mobilization is so central to subject economics that everything, be it budgeting, taxation, stock markets, self-help groups, the APMCs, financial inclusions and many more are nothing but related means or issues. So every topic should be read keeping these things in mind. So also it should be noted that in modern societies all factors of production, trade or service like natural resources, human resource, energy resource, etc., and their value is represented by currency or money. So study about distribution of money in market subsumes all other types of resource distribution under it. So the institution which basically facilitate resource mobilization are called financial intermediaries or FIs. So in our previous discussion we had discussed the importance of investments, etc. So effective resource mobilization will aim at channelizing resources towards most productive sectors and avenues which yield maximum good for least advantaged people. It is precisely here that debate of growth versus development becomes quite relevant. Now most important FIs are banks, insurance, capital markets, and as we noted earlier, government also to much extent. So we will try to cover these intermediaries along with the related the current issues which are going on. So this entire series will tentatively include the following discussions. First one, as I had said in the beginning only, banking sector, insurance and capital markets, government finances, financial inclusions, the monetary and fiscal policy. So we will try to cover all the relevant topics with reasonable depth connecting with the recent developments, but given the nature of the topic. So it is likely that it is highly unlikely that something important might be intentionally be skipped. So further, all these topics are quite interrelated. For example, financial inclusions is common theme running throughout the topic. So something might have been deliberately out of this entire discussion to be covered in the next discussions. All right. So now let us discuss more about banking sector as a resource mobilizer. So guys, the basic concept is that the ancient money lending systems used to serve limited area, but current banking system has gone global. कि जैसे कि हम जानते हैं एंशियंट जो हमारी सोसाइटी थी उनमें मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम बार्टर सिस्टम ही कंसिडर होता था. मतलब कि अगर आपको एक गुड्स पर्टिकुलर चाहिए और दूसरे इंसान के पास है और दूसरे इंसान को ऐसी चीज चाहिए जो आपके पास है, देन दे बोथ यूज्ड टू एक्सचेंज थिंग्स. Now resource mobilization happens not only in an economy but also beyond political borders. So obviously degree of integration differs from country to country, as attested by after effects of global financial crisis of 2008 that we will discuss in our coming slides or the next video depending upon the time. So different persons in an economy have different risk appetite or capacity to take risk, but at the same time most important concept of finance is direct relation of risk and return profit. More is the risk, more is the profit. So banking system facilitates movement of money from risk averse people to risk ready ones. Now surplus money you have can be among many other things invested in stock markets or deposited in banks. Now banks guarantee repayment of whole sum along with pre-agreed interest. So there is a high risk of certainty and assurance to the depositor. In contrast, stock exchanges provide no such assurance. Person may not be able to recover even his invested money. So risk averse people will prefer bank over stock markets, private business or any other risk investment. This is a hypothetical scenario. So on the other hand, many people who have some knowledge for what else to do of money are ready to invest, but they don't have money. These will borrow same money which was just deposited by risk averse people. So bank insurers ensures its lending to these so-called risk-ready people by adequate risk assessment, mortgages or hypothecation. In risk assessment, bank studies financial capacity and credibility of potential borrower. For this, it goes into matters like his annual income, past credit history, etc. Now, term loans are disbursed by keeping some physical property of borrower mortgage. So under mortgage, bank keeps documents of such property or understanding that those will be returned on repayment of the loan. So loan agreement includes a clause in which borrower authorizes the bank to sell the property or inability of borrower to repay such money. So in case loan is given against the financial asset such as shares or debentures, it is called as hypothecation, not mortgage. Okay, so in the initial phase of economic development, banks are main means of resource mobilization in an economy. On same lines, this is the case currently in India. This is because majority of people in such economies are too risk averse. New firms in developing economies find it difficult to raise such money through capital markets and consequently they naturally go to banks for loans. As Indian economy is expanding, capital markets are getting stronger year by year. This makes banking industry a most important backbone of the Indian economy. Now let us see evolution of banking or nationalization and later private licenses in brief. So for the past 3 decades in India, banking system has several outstanding achievements to its credits. The most striking is its extensive reach. It is no longer confined to only metropolitans or cosmopolitans in India. In fact, Indian banking system has reached even to the remote corners of the country. This is one of the main reasons of India's growth process. The government's regular policy for Indian banks since 1969 has paid rich dividends with the nationalization of 14 major private banks of India. The first bank in India through Conservative was established in 1786, and from 1786 till today, the journey of Indian banking system can be segregated into three distinct phases. The earlier phase was from 1786 to 1969 of Indian banks. The next was nationalization of Indian banks, and it was up to 1991 prior to Indian sector reforms. And the third one was a new phase of Indian banking system with the advent of Indian financial and banking sector reforms, which happened after 1991, after that LPG reform. Now let us discuss each phase one by one. Briefly we will discuss that. Now let us look into the phase 1 briefly. So the General Bank of India was set up in the year 1786. Next, Bank of Hindustan and Bengal Bank. The East India Company established Bank of Bengal in 1809, Bank of Bombay in 1840 and Bank of Madras in 1843 as independent units and called it as Presidency Bank. These three banks were amalgamated in 1920 and Imperial Bank of India was established, which started as private shareholders banks, mostly European shareholders. This bank later became as State Bank of India. In 1865, Allahabad Bank was established and first time exclusively by Indians. Punjab National Bank Limited was set up in 1894 with headquarters at Lahore, which is currently in Pakistan. So between 1906 and 1913, Bank of India, Central Bank of India, Bank of Baroda, Canara Bank, Indian Bank and Bank of Mysore was set up. Reserve Bank of India came in 1935. It was first government company. During the first phase, the growth was very slow and banks also experienced periodic failures between 1913 and 1948. There was approximately 1,100 banks, mostly they were small. To streamline the function and activities of commercial banks, the Government of India came up with the Banking Companies Act 1949, which was later changed to Banking Regulation Act 1949 as per the Amendment Act of 1965. As per these, the Reserve Bank of India was vested with extensive powers for supervision of banking in India as the central banking authority. During those days, public was lesser confident in banks. As aftermath deposits mobilization was slow, abreast of it, the saving banks facility provided by the postal departments, comparatively it was safer. Moreover, the funds were largely given to the traders. Now let us look briefly into the phase 2, which was very important. So government took major steps in the Indian banking sector reform after independence. In 1955, it nationalized Imperial Bank of India with extensive banking facilities on a large scale, especially in rural and semi-urban areas. It formed State Bank of India to act as principal agent of Reserve Bank of India and to handle the banking transaction of union and state governments all over the country. 7 banks forming subsidiary of State Bank of India was nationalized in 1959. A major process of nationalization was carried out carried out when in 1969 14 major commercial banks in country were nationalized. Okay. So now let us briefly discuss about the phase 2 of this entire scene. So in phase 2, government took major steps in the Indian banking sector reform after independence. In 1955, it nationalized Imperial Bank of India with extensive banking facilities on large scale, especially in rural and semi-urban areas. It formed State Bank of India to act as a principal agent of Reserve Bank of India and to handle banking transactions of the union and state governments all over the country. Now, 7 banks forming subsidiary of State Bank of India was nationalized in 1959. A major process of nationalization was carried out when in 1969 14 major commercial banks in the country were nationalized. Second phase of nationalization Indian banking sector reform was carried out in 1980 with 7 more banks. This step brought 80% of the banking segment in India under government ownership. So आप अपनी स्क्रीन पर देख सकते हो कि ये सारे बैंक्स थे या फिर आप कह सकते हो ये सारे बैंकिंग स्टेप्स थे, मतलब फॉलोइंग दीज स्टेप्स वर टेकन बाय द गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया to regulate banking institutions in the country. So in 1949 there was this act called as Enactment of Banking Regulation Act. In 1955 nationalization of State Bank of India was done. In 1959 nationalization of SBI subsidiaries were done. 1961 में इंश्योरेंस कवर एक्सटेंडेड टू डिपॉजिट्स हुआ था. Then in 1969 nationalization of 14 major banks were done. 1971 में similarly creation of Credit Guarantee Corporation was done. 1975 creation of regional rural banks were done, and in 1980 nationalization of 7 banks with deposits over 200 crores were done. So banking in this is in the sunshine of government ownership gave the public implied faith and immense confidence about the sustainability of these institutions. Now let us discuss about the phase 3 which happened. So this phase has introduced many more products and facilities in the banking sector in its reforms measures. So in 1991, after that LPG thing, a committee was set up which worked for liberalization of banking practices. Phone banking and net banking was also introduced. So the entire system became more convenient and swift. Time is given for more importance than money. Now let us understand banking and agriculture. So guys, in the past farming was carried out in a traditional way. It was a subsistence farming, and was more or less self-sufficient, and credit needs for farmers were limited and were met with mostly by the money lenders, relatives, friends, and some extended by tacit loans from government. So money lenders used to exploit the farmers in various ways like exorbitant rates of interest, false documents, etc. So with government intervention, share of institutionalized credit in total farm credit has raised substantially. However, it is said that after reforms of 1991, ratio institutionalized credit has gone down. Institutional credit is one which is borrowed by farmers from institutions that are monitored by government agencies. So after independence and particularly after the Green Revolution, agriculture entered in the era of modernization and the credit needs of farming communities started increasing. In present day, market oriented farming, the credit has become one of the crucial inputs. The changing environment and the government policies are forcing banks to tend more to the agricultural sector. Both private and public banks are now involving themselves in a lot of agri-based lending activities. Besides financing traditional activities, banks are also involved in the training and setting up consultancies, agri clinics, the export and marketing of agriculture produce, etc. So specialized loans like horticulture, aquaculture, animal husbandry, floriculture and sericulture businesses. So to meet specific needs of the farmers are offered by the banks. The farmers can benefit from these loans by timely approach and prompt repayment. Now let us discuss the types of banks. So RBI classifies banks as the commercial banks, refers to both scheduled and non-scheduled commercial banks which are regulated under the Banking Regulation Act 1949. So first one was scheduled commercialized banks are grouped under the following categories. So those banks which are included under second schedule of RBI of 1934 and whose paid up capital and funds collected are not less than 5 lakh. Further, they must not involve themselves in any activity which adversely affects interest of the depositors. The State Bank of India and its associates. Next one is other nationalized banks and the foreign banks. So foreign banks can either open their branch in India or they can open wholly owned subsidiaries, that is WOS. So WOS is a company in which 100% shares are held by the parent company. Now RBI has current policy in prompting WOS route. This is because the apprehension of Western financial crisis. Branch office remains more dependent and under control of the head office, whereas the WOS, they enjoy much autonomy and is to some extent more immune from any problems of parent company or that of the home country. So in case of the branch, 75% of the FDI, that is foreign direct investment, is allowed, and in case of WOS 100% it is. So they have 100% of FDIs. So WOS also receives near national treatment. So they are allowed to open branches anywhere in India except of course some sensitive areas also. So there are concerns that too much of reliance on foreign banks can compromise long-term security and sovereignty of India. So to address this, it is provided that the capital and reserves in hands of foreign companies shall not go beyond 20% of the capital and reserves of national bank system. Now speaking about the regional rural banks, or we also call it as RRB, जिनके लिए आप एग्जाम्स भी देते हो. So RRBs were established in 1975 with a view to develop the rural economy and to create the supplementary channel to the corporate credit structure, and with the view it was established to enlarge the institutional credit for the rural and agricultural sector. Now RRBs have to be sponsored by some commercial banks. So the government of India, the concerned state government and the bank which had sponsored the RRB contributed to the share capital of RRB in proportion of 50%, 15% and 35% respectively. So the area of cooperation of RRB is limited to notify few districts in states. The RRBs mobilize deposits primarily from rural or semi-urban areas, and they provide loans and advances mostly to small and marginal farmers, agricultural laborers, rural artisans and some other segments of priority sector. Now speaking about the other scheduled commercial banks, they are also known as private banks. So some banks escaped nationalization derives of pre-1990s and they continued to operate as private bank. For example, the ING Vaisya or Jammu Kashmir Bank. So after the LPG reformed in 1991, new banks license were granted in pursuance of banking law amended in 1993. So this time it was very competitive for banks as HDFC, ICICI, Axis Bank and Kotak Mahindra etc. In latest round, in principal license is granted to IDFC and the Bandhan Bank. So the in principle approval granted will be valid for a period of 18 months, during which the applicants have to comply with the requirements under the guidelines and fulfill other conditions as may be stipulated by RBI. So on being satisfied that applicants have complied with requisite condition laid down by RBI as a part of in principle approval, they would be considered for grant of license for commencement of banking business under Banking Regulation Act 1949. So under the regular license is issued, the applicants would be barred from doing banking business. Now speaking about the non-scheduled commercial banks, banks not included under second schedule of RBI Act 1934, these banks require statutory cash reserve requirements, but they are not required to keep them with RBI. They must keep these balance with themselves. They are not entitled to borrow from RBI for normal banking purposes. So, though they may approach the RBI for accommodation under abnormal circumstances, alright? Now guys, let us discuss about the cooperative banks. So, cooperative bank is a financial entity which belongs to its members who are at the same time owners and the customers of their bank. So guys, that's all for this particular class. If you like this video, then do hit the like button. अगर आप इस प्लेटफॉर्म पे नए हो तो फिर सब्सक्राइब बटन प्रेस करिएगा, एंड सो दैट यू कैन गेट नोटिफाइड एवरी टाइम वी आर ऑन यूट्यूब. थैंक्स अ लॉट फॉर वॉचिंग एंड टेक केयर.